All right, we need to talk about social media. So I think, and many others think, that social media is one of the biggest dangers to our mental health and lives, essentially, that we face today. I'm going to explain why. This might be a bit hypocritical because I use social media, but there's ways of using it that don't cause as much harm. So imagine if you could get all the benefits of social media while eliminating 90% of the negative sides of social media. So firstly, this is not going to be conspiratorial. I'm not going to mention much of my research and theories on the real reason that it's set up this way. I'm going to purely talk logically and in terms of the pros and cons of social media that you might not be aware of. So firstly, you've got to remember that social media, I'm talking specifically about algorithm-based platforms, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and even YouTube. The algorithm that they have programmed is basically designed to optimize for profits, designed to optimize for engagement and watch time. So if they show you something negative, that causes more engagement than something positive. It causes you to have an emotional reaction, which means you're more likely to comment, you're more likely to spend lots of time commenting and sharing and supporting people who you think are making good arguments and downvoting and hating on people who are not making good arguments in your opinion. And this all means that your mental health is basically declining. This study has been done that shows the more time you spend on platforms like Facebook, the more likely you are to get depressed, the lower self-esteem you have, the worse you feel about yourself and your life. This applies to just about any platform that is based on an algorithm, and it's usually the more visual ones, but also Twitter is just as bad. So what we know then is that the algorithms are designed, they literally have teams of people, hundreds of people, who their full-time job is just to make you more addicted to the platform. And they literally sit there all day, full-time, in their offices and looking at all the data and analytics, and they just think up ways to keep you addicted and to keep you engaging with their platforms. That's what they do. You can't outsmart that. As much as we like to think we can, we can't. You know, our brains will be hijacked if we allow ourselves to spend time on these platforms. And this has been shown. Right, the average person who engages with, let's say, Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, over time, they spend more and more time on the platform. If left alone, if nothing else intervenes, the average person will spend more and more time on the platform as they go on. It starts off with just checking up on things, then you get into some groups, into some arguments, you find whatever, right? The point is, the algorithms are designed to keep you there. And that means you have less time to work on yourself, and you spend more time engaging with their platform, giving them money, essentially. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, and the real downsides here, is your mental health declines, you get more and more depressed. With Instagram, you start comparing yourselves to other people, and with Twitter, you start getting to arguments. With Facebook, you're kind of distracted, and YouTube, you're distracted and kept there for a long time. But beyond that, you actually become manipulated and influenced by the messages that you're shown. And this has been shown to be the case across all platforms that you would consider to be the big platforms. So Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. On these platforms, as I'm sure you've noticed, there's censorship, right? Certain ideas are simply not allowed to be discussed. Certain concepts, certain comments even. In some subreddit groups, you can get banned for life for simply asking questions about the main narrative, right? Simply for asking, hold on a minute, is this safe? Or hold on a minute, there's not been any tests that show this. Can you show me some studies to back up, this claim? Banned for life. Or, if you go the other way, if you say, I have found a study that shows this is not safe, banned for life. And you've got to understand that this is not an accident. This is not happening randomly. This is very calculated and precise movements that is happening. As a subreddit owner myself, I no longer have a subreddit because I received a message that all mods to subreddits have received, which tells you what to censor. It tells you if you don't censor these things, you won't have a subreddit. We'll take it away from you. So you have to do it. They have to do it. Because the elites who control the things, like for example the CEO of Reddit, the CEO of Twitter, they are all connected to the same fundamental people. At the World Economic Forum, the people who have the agenda to have a one world totalitarian government where you'll own nothing and be happy. This is literally what they said. So when you understand that the big platforms are all playing this game, and that they have teams of people dedicated to keeping you engaged on the platform, making sure that you don't see information you're not supposed to see, making sure that you stay engaged and stressed and whatever, it makes you wonder, okay, so why am I doing it then? And most people have never asked this question. If I also were to ask you now, how long per day do you want to spend on Instagram, right? Most of you would say something along the lines of 20 minutes to half an hour as a maximum. If I said, how much time do you want to spend of your life scrolling through an Instagram profile? 20 minutes to half an hour per day, which is arguably that's a lot already. But the reality is that the average person spends far more than that. They spend about an hour and a half. And in some extremes, people spend 6 hours per day on platforms like Instagram and YouTube. 6 hours a day. That's almost a full-time job. So if you imagine, right, people are spending almost the same amount of time as a full-time job scrolling through a platform that does not have your best interests at heart. A platform that is owned by somebody who has a very sinister agenda and who knows how to manipulate your brain, right? It's not good. So we know that it's very difficult to avoid. They spend a lot of money and effort and resources to make you addicted to it. And we know that most of the owners of these platforms have an agenda, right? They're connected to certain people who have very questionable agendas, right? So what can you do about it? Well, there's one very simple way. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by these guys. I use this thing. I'm pretty sure it's free. Maybe I paid for the upgraded version. There's a software called Cold Turkey Blocker. And what this does, you install it on your computer and you can set up kind of blocks, restrictions on yourself. So you can say, I only want to spend 15 minutes a day on Twitter, no more. I only want to spend 30 minutes a day on YouTube. And you can set a timer. So you can set it to lock that setting for a certain period of time, let's say a month. So you can't change it back even if you wanted to. And I've been using this for maybe 2 years or more. I've had other ones before. But you need to do this because your brain is hijacked by the dopamine systems. All of us become at one point or another addicted to the validation and the dopamine release you get from using these platforms, and they know this. You have to use technology to your advantage in terms of like physically restricting your access to it, because the studies are very clear. The less time you spend on Facebook, the happier you are. Literally. Like it's as black and white as that. The less time you spend on Instagram, the less likely you are to get depressed. It's very, very simple. There's a very strong correlation. So with the amount of time you spend on these platforms and how you feel, how you actually are. So download Cold Turkey Blocker. It's free. There's a paid upgrade, I think. And just set these restrictions up and just see how you feel. You know, in my opinion, Twitter is absolutely unnecessary for the vast majority of the population. Literally not needed at all. Because what do you really have on Twitter is you have most of the accounts are bots or companies who are just essentially just broadcasting 24 hours a day. You should think this. Here's what we think you should think. Fear this. Don't fear that. You know, all this stuff. And yeah, ultimately, you don't really need it. There are very few of us. I mean, like a very small minority of people who actually use Twitter to keep up to date with their friends, which is the intended purpose from the beginning, apparently. Very few of us do that. You know, most of us, you look at the trending section, we get triggered or angered by some new trending thing. We go in and start arguments with people and then we log out. That's it. And you can say the same for things like Instagram. Very few of us use Instagram to catch up with our friends' lives. Mostly what we're doing is we're scrolling through the homepage and like comparing ourselves to these random people that we've never met and thinking, oh, that's a nice car, or, you know, I wish my life was like that. I wish my body was like that. I wish I had that much money. But ultimately, the only thing that does is make you feel worse. Nothing else. Now, YouTube is an exception. And the reason I use YouTube so much is because it can be used for good. And, you know, on YouTube, you have a lot of information. You can learn things. You can research things. And it's ultimately pretty good. The community is good. The comments usually are pretty friendly. But that being said, you should still limit how much time you spend on it per day. Now, there's another thing I would recommend. If you're like me and you use YouTube to learn and research things, you don't need the home feed. You don't need recommended videos, suggested videos, because like I said, that's just the algorithm deciding you should watch this next. Not because it's good for you, not because you want to watch it, but because you will watch it anyway, because you'll be addicted to it. You know, that random video that sends you down the rabbit hole. And then suddenly you've wasted 2 hours watching YouTube videos and they're pointless. You know, it's like some guy playing Minecraft, or it's some random thing that you have no interest in. Or if you do have an interest in it, it doesn't benefit you in any way. So why are you watching it? So the solution to that is a browser add-on, another free thing called Newsfeed Eradicator. What this does is it eradicates your newsfeed. So it basically makes your newsfeed invisible. So you can't see suggested videos, you can't see ads, you can't see these random like distractions that they try and throw at you. But you can search for videos. So let's say if you're on YouTube and you want to search for something, you can search for videos and see the search results. But you don't get the suggested videos, you don't get the distractions, the browse, the homepage, all that stuff. Because you don't need it. You know, there's been so many times when I've gone onto YouTube to try and research something before I had this plugin, and you just wind up down the rabbit hole, distracted by the suggested videos, and then you jump onto Twitter, and then it's just a waste of time. So I would recommend doing that. And another thing you can do, and this is something I've been doing for a long time, is your internet router doesn't need to be on past a certain time. Firstly, when you're sleeping, you don't need your internet on because it's just going to be pumping out frequencies, literally like pumping out internet frequencies between 2.4 hertz and up to 5, depending on your internet router. All night, it's just going to be pumping out these frequencies while you're sleeping. You don't need that. It's bad for you. We know it's bad for us. What I do is I use a timer switch. So I plug my router into a timer switch. Past a certain time, for me that time is 9 p.m. The internet turns off and it doesn't turn on again until about 7 in the morning. And that's really good because you don't need to be on the internet. And it's been shown that the more screen time you have in the 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed, the worse your sleep. And this is something that I've tracked extensively on, I have an Aura ring, don't know if you can see this, which tracks my sleep. And I noticed that when I spend time on my phone, on social media, on YouTube before bed, my sleep is worse. But the sweet spot seems to be 2 to 3 hours. So about 2 or 3 hours before I go to bed, the internet cuts off, my phone, my laptop, not used, right? And ultimately what this does is you feel better, you have more time, and then you're more able to improve yourself, raise your vibrations, build a business, whatever it is you're trying to do, read books, study, socialize. The things that actually make your life better, you have more time to do them, and you're not contributing to social media platforms that are doing bad things like that, and you feel better. So in my opinion, it's an absolute no-brainer, and it's free. It's absolutely free. You can literally do this right now. You can download Cold Turkey Blocker. You can download Newsfeed Eradicator. You can spend $5 on Amazon or whatever and buy a timer switch for your router. Very, very easy to do. And I promise you, these 3 things will make a huge difference to your life. Absolutely huge. Anyway, so let me know what you think. And ironically, go and comment on this social media platform about what you think. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you next time.